Welcome to Surrey Police Live. I'm Andy Smith, your host for the next hour. And this evening we have two Borough Commanders and also a temporary Chief Inspector here to explain the work that they do and how they engage perhaps with what's happening down your street. Are you satisfied with what you're seeing from the police? Have you got lots of praise you'd like to give us tonight? Your chance to ask questions on the YouTube and Facebook channels. You can do it in the comments box. But let's have a look first of all what's been happening in Surrey Police over the last week with our news.
Hi there, I'm Mampton Oakes, a detective at Surrey Police, and I'll be bringing you the latest headlines from around the force this evening. First up, a man from Woking has pleaded guilty after being arrested for drink driving as part of a crackdown on drink and drug drivers. The man was arrested on the A320 in Chertsey on the 11th of December after crashing his car into a taxi whilst on the 6 Crossroads roundabout. He was breathalyzed at the scene and found to be way over the legal limit for drink driving. The man was amongst 174 motorists arrested during Surrey Police's crackdown on drink and drug drivers, which ran from the 1st of December to the 1st of January. Of those, 23 have since been convicted in court. Details of people convicted as part of the campaign will be published on our website. If you're prepared to drink under the influence of drink or drugs, prepare to face the consequences. These could include killing or seriously injuring yourself or someone else, a minimum 12-month ban, an unlimited fine, a possible prison sentence, a criminal record which could affect your current and future employment, an increase in your car insurance costs or trouble travelling to countries such as the USA. If you know someone is driving while over the limit or after taking drugs, call 999. You can also contact the independent charity Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111 or report it online via their website. A violent man is behind bars after physically and mentally abusing a woman for nearly 10 years. Tony Flysick, 38, of Fernback Crescent in Ascot, was sentenced at Guildford Crown Court on Wednesday the 23rd of March after pleading guilty to grievous bodily harm and coercive controlling behaviour. He was sentenced to 5 years and 11 months imprisonment. The victim, who suffered at the hands of her perpetrator for almost a decade, was verbally abused and violently assaulted on multiple occasions, resulting in broken bones. In a statement, Detective Constable Rachel Bennett, who investigated the case, urged anyone who may be a victim of domestic abuse or may know someone who is a victim to reach out for help. If you are suffering from physical, sexual, psychological or financial abuse, or being threatened, intimidated or stalked by a current or previous partner or close family friend, it's likely you're a victim of domestic abuse. You can report it to us online, or if you're not ready to speak to the police, you can contact support organisations who will help you by visiting the web address on your screen now. Officers are warning of an increase in keyless car thefts across Surrey this week. Drivers with keyless entry or keyless start functions on their cars are vulnerable to vehicle thieves who use relay devices to hack into and steal keyless cars, a method which is estimated to be responsible for 90% of vehicle thefts across the UK. There are several simple steps which you can take to protect your car from thieves, including keeping car keys away from windows and doors, storing keys in a metal tin or a signal blocker pouch, and using a wheel lock. For more tips on how to keep your car safe from thieves, visit our website. And finally, you may have seen our episode last week about PC recruitment and joining Surrey Police. If you're still deciding whether to join, we have some good news. You now have a little longer to decide. The deadline for applications has been extended until Monday the 11th of April. If you have any questions about joining Surrey Police, you can contact the team by emailing policeconstable@surrey.police.uk or visit our website for more information, surrey.police.uk/PC. Thank you for tuning in to hear the latest news from Surrey Police HQ. For now, it's back to the studio.
So that's what's been happening here in the last week. Your chance to ask questions of 2 Borough Commanders and a temporary Chief Inspector over the next hour. You can use the comments box on YouTube and Facebook, however you're watching us at the moment. So hello to everyone in the studio. Let's go round the table. And Maxine, hello.
Hello, I'm Maxine Chillier. I'm the Spelthorne Borough Commander.
Okay, and next to you?
And I'm Karen Hughes, the Tandridge Borough Commander.
And finally?
Hi, I'm Dave Bentley. I'm the Temporary Detective Chief Inspector for West Surrey, but previously to that I was the Woking Borough Commander.
So, Borough Commanders, all round the table in one form or another.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
How are we all today after, well, getting ready for this for starters? Karen?
Good, thank you. Ready for this. Ready to sort of talk to the public about what we've been doing over the last few months and what we're doing to obviously keep your community safe.
Maxine?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for us to actually explain what we are doing and maybe explain away some of the myths behind the work that we do on the boroughs.
Oh, that's interesting. Myths, we'll have to pick you up on that. Dave?
Yeah, just a great opportunity this evening. And yeah, if you've got any questions, please encourage you just to drop them in, anything you like. And now is the time.
So, you've been a Borough Commander, you've
Yes.
stepped up the ladder, I guess. So let's bring you back to Borough Commander again.
Definitely.
What does the job involve?
Well, it involves, we were just saying earlier actually, it's a fantastic job. It's an opportunity to really police a specific geographic area in Surrey. We have 11 of us in Surrey at Borough Commander level, and you work on community priorities, community problem solving across that borough, and you manage your team to work in that direction and really meet the needs of the public.
How does that fit with you, Karen?
Yeah, same. And I mean, we get the opportunity then to develop strategic working relationships with partners and stakeholders to make sure that our neighbourhood policing is effective and efficient and meets the needs of the communities we serve.
When you say partners and stakeholders, what does that really mean?
Partners, so there's a number of partner agencies that we work with, and when I talk about partners, I'm not just talking about other authorities like the council and social services. I'm also talking about the public, Neighbourhood Watch and other voluntary groups. So it's really working with partners, both business organisations and communities.
Maxine, how does that all fit? You have a different area from Tandridge.
I do have a different area, yeah, and I think this role gives you the opportunity to be innovative about policing, and that's what I love. It gives you the opportunity to think about different ways that your particular community can help and assist with change, and how you can get volunteers to work within the community to help progress that change.
You're very much working on a local level, but when somebody's got a problem and they pick up the phone and they do 999, you expect the same sort of response. So how can people understand the difference between that 999 and what you're doing much more locally on a neighbourhood level?
So there's different levels of policing, and the response that you're going to get from a 999 call is going to be with our neighbourhood policing teams, which are generally our response teams and our teams that also do the level of investigation that you would expect, unless it's a more complex job role or a more specialised role, and then it will go into a specialised team under the sort of CID or domestic abuse or child abuse kind of teams. The role that we do is looking at the amount of work that comes in through those teams, looking at our communities, identifying crime patterns and trends, looking to see where our antisocial behaviour is, and working to try and resolve that, make changes to reduce the demand on policing, but also to make the communities a safer place to live in.
That's interesting. So, Karen, how does your area compare from Tandridge to Maxine Spelthorne?
Somewhat quite different. So there will be some common themes, I'd say, across both boroughs in terms of the crime types we're seeing. But Tandridge does have a large rural profile compared to other boroughs across Surrey, including Spelthorne. So for me, rural crime is a priority for Tandridge, and it's really important for me and my team that we deliver an effective response around rural crime. and again engaging members of that community in our problem solving to try and eradicate some of the crimes we're seeing in that area.
So how does that really happen then, to get everybody involved to bring the results you're looking for?
So we have introduced a rural joint action group, which is a partnership meeting, bringing partners together and members of the public together to problem solve. So then we can share information. We can look for maybe areas that we're trying to develop the information around to identify potentially who is committing these offences. And then we can share the right messaging out there as to what we're doing to tackle rural crime. And what we really want to do is ensure that we're engaging with that community so they feel involved, because this is about working together. And as a result, we've already seen a real improvement in confidence levels around our ability to tackle rural crime across Tandridge.
When you say confidence, is that a police confidence, or is that the
That's
confidence
a public
of the public?
confidence.
Uh-huh.
And my aim there, and what I want the public to feel confident, because we know that if the public feel confident in our ability, they're more likely to report incidents. And what I want the public doing is reporting incidents like suspicious activity before it reaches that criminal level, so we can obviously respond accordingly.
Dave, from the Western point of view, did you, before we came on, were you saying that is Woking but out to the west? So how does that all compare, and with what Karen was saying about rural crime?
I think it'd be quite fair to say that our 11 boroughs within Surrey are fantastically unique in regards to community, but also geography. So there will be those differences, which are great. Woking, where I was before, has got a mixture of mainly urban, but a little bit of rural, but mainly urban demographic, and kind of wealth as well, spread quite significantly. So you look at indices of deprivation and things like that, and we work probably tirelessly to try and prevent crime happening in our areas in all different ways.
But does that make it a little bit harder in that you're trying to balance rural crime with, say, what might be happening in Woking? Is it much harder to get that balance than perhaps, say, what Karen is dealing with?
It can be, but I think you've got to be quite clear on what your objectives are. And I think we all understand what our community issues are, and we try to do sessions like this with our communities where we understand what they feel is the priorities. You've got to have that dialogue with your community so you understand what they're experiencing and what they think the priorities are, and what we do compared to the data that we look at. We've got a wealth of data and information available to us, which is brilliant. But it's about getting that mixture, because what our data might say might not be what our members of the public are experiencing on the ground.
So, Dave mentions dialogue, your chance to ask questions to us all the way as we are live until 7, so use the comments on the YouTube or on Facebook. Let's turn to safer neighbourhood teams. I think you've probably all touched on it already in some form, but to anybody out watching us tonight, what does that really mean to you from your point of view, and how you convey that to the public, Maxine?
The Safer Neighbourhood teams are made up of a number of PCs and PCSOs, but also specialist officers such as youth engagement officers, and also we've got design out crime officers and antisocial behaviour officers. And together, when we talk about problem solving, we're looking at all the different ways that we can work together with our partners to look at one particular problem and be innovative about managing that problem. It could be as simple as an area which is a number of youths that are congregating over a period of time. I'll give an example that over a period of time in Sunbury, we had an issue where we couldn't work out why children were going to that area. And then when we worked with some of our partners, which were trading standards, we discovered that one shop in particular had been selling psychoactive substances in these sort of gummy bears and that kind of thing that you see.
What, sorry?
They're called gummy bears. They're like cannabis impregnated sweets that will attract children. So
right.
they're taking psychoactive substances, but actually in a sweet form. So of course they're going to attract children to the location. When we discovered that and the trading standards intervened, all of those substances taken away, the shop owner dealt with, and actually what we've seen as a result of that is that the children are no longer congregating in that particular area. So it's looking at the root causes as to why things are happening, and it takes a bit of work to achieve that. Turning up on a 999 call on the day will resolve that moment at that time, but over a period of time with the work that we can do, we can actually resolve that and find out what the root of the problem is.
How does that compare with Tandridge, Karen?
Yeah, very similar. I would also like to add to what Maxine's just said, in that, the teams are actively engaged with partners to support and safeguard vulnerable individuals and groups within communities. So for the teams really need, they need to understand local issues in order to identify that threat, harm and risk, so they can effectively keep communities safe. But yeah, very similar to Max.
And I guess, Dave, you're going to probably echo all that.
Yeah, very much so. We're lucky in our neighbourhood teams are fantastically resourced in terms of specialisms. We, Max said, ASB specialist officers that look at the law around antisocial behaviour and guide us in what we can and can't do in order to, really look after people and make sure we deal with those community problems. Let's not forget our police community support officers, which are sometimes, really visible within our streets and in our teams and build that community engagement. They're fantastic. So we're very, very lucky to have those teams. And we're all working together with our partners. And I think one more thing I'd probably best to say is that we can't do this on our own. No. We've got to do it as a partnership. Can't do it as just a police service. We need our partners, whether that be other public bodies or volunteers or private industry. We need people to come together to work with us.
So, Temporary Chief Inspector Dave.
Yes.
We've got Borough Commander Karen and Borough Commander Maxine. That's some of the Borough Commanders, so let's introduce you to the rest of them. But first, Temporary Assistant Chief Constable Ali Barlow.
Good evening, I'm Temporary Assistant Chief Constable Ali Barlow, and I'm responsible for local policing in the county. And part of the teams that come under my command are our amazing Safer Neighbourhood teams, who are located in the 11 districts and boroughs across the county. And every single day they work with you, the community, and their partners, problem solving and doing prevention activity to make sure that you, the community of Surrey, feel safe and most importantly are safe. So why don't we now meet our Borough Commanders?
I'm Inspector Alex Maguire, Borough Commander for Reigate and Banstead. I am committed to making sure Reigate and Banstead is a place where people are safe and where they feel safe. We are passionate about reducing drugs in our community and dealing with the associated violence.
My name is Bert Dean and I'm Borough Commander for Elmbridge. I've always loved technology and I enjoy helping our officers make the best use of that technology to catch criminals and identify crime trends in the area and across the force.
Hello, I'm Inspector John Vale, Borough Commander for Ep6 and Ewell. I'm responsible for local policing within the borough, ensuring that we are tackling the issues that cause the most harm to communities.
My name is Karen Hughes and I'm the Tandridge Borough Commander. I really enjoy working with partner agencies and the public to tackle those issues impacting on communities and implement long-term solutions to prevent these issues from reoccurring.
Hello. My name's James Wyatt and I'm Borough Commander for Runnymede. Neighbourhood policing is something I'm really passionate about, ensuring that we listen to you and focus on the issues that matter to the people who live, work and study in Runnymede. Visible community policing is a really important element of that, and you'll see me alongside the Runnymede policing team focusing on the issues that matter to you. Our recent focus has been around tackling violence against women and girls, preventing burglaries, tackling antisocial behaviour and improving road safety.
Hello, my name's Karen Coyne and I'm the Mole Valley Borough Commander. The thing I enjoy most about neighbourhoods is using our ASB powers to deal with problems that have been really affecting people's lives.
Hello, my name's Kit Mock and I'm the Woking Borough Commander. I get a lot of satisfaction by working with the public and protecting them, whether that's closing down a cannabis factory or going on a walk along with them to learn more about their neighbourhood and finding ways to problem solve issues that are affecting the community.
Hello, my name is Gemma Taylor and I'm the Borough Commander for Surrey Heath. What I'm most passionate about is making sure we spend our time dealing with matters that affect the community most.
Hi, my name is Maxine Chelia and I'm the Spelthorne Borough Commander based at Staines Police Station. I love doing this role because it enables me to work with local communities and to problem solve some of the complex issues that we have within our environments.
Hi, I'm Inspector Sam Adcock and I'm the Borough Commander for Waverley. I'm really passionate about my teams not only understanding the issues in their area, but putting long-term solutions in place to really tackle them.
Hello, my name is Alec James and I'm the Borough Commander for Guildford. My favourite bit about the role is being able to prevent crime and antisocial behaviour from affecting the community. To look at the people, groups and places that are the highest risk and are the most vulnerable, so we can target our resources to either stop them offending or committing ASB, or to protect them, to prevent people from becoming victims.
So that's the work of the Borough Commanders. You can follow what's happening in your borough following the Beat page on our Facebook pages and also on Twitter. And that's where you can send questions to us at the moment, YouTube and Facebook. Your chance to get a direct response from the Borough Commanders that are here until 7 o'clock. Ricky, I hope you're watching, because here's your question. How hard is it to be a Borough Commander? Dave?
Good question. I suppose for me, the first word that comes to mind is a privilege. It's a privilege to be a Borough Commander. It's a privilege to be able to feel that you're contributing to a community and actually looking at the long-term problems and making people's lives better. That's why we all join the job, I think, and I think a Borough Commander is a fantastic way in which to do that, and you get to work with some lovely people.
Karen, the stresses of the job, I wonder if that's what Ricky might be
I
heading
think it's
towards.
I don't like the term sort of how hard. I would say it's challenging at times. I think we all obviously are aware of police cutbacks over the years, etc. But we're so fortunate in Surrey to see the neighbourhood teams grow again, and that investment into neighbourhood policing. Neighbourhood policing is my passion, so that's one of my real drives. But the challenge comes when you're trying to, I guess, manage demand around those priority crimes, which must be a priority. Those crimes where people exposed to the most awful harm, so our vulnerable victims in our communities, but they must be prioritised.
So what are you referring to there?
So domestic abuse, child sexual exploitation or child criminal exploitation, modern day slavery offences, vulnerable victims, that's just to name a few. So it's really vital that we do protect those most vulnerable. But at the same time, there are other issues also impacting heavily on communities, and we must also pay attention to those. And that's the challenge, is then spreading sort of the resource demands across all areas. Because I think a number of the crimes that I've just spoken about that must remain a priority can be hidden at times. And we want people to come forward and report these crimes or report concerns or if they see any sort of warning signs of these crimes. But yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge for me, is sort of resourcing and spreading that out through demand.
So following on from that, does that mean therefore perhaps with your balancing resources, do you feel you've let down anybody by not dealing with something because you simply didn't have the resource to adequately deal with it?
I think for me, and as a team, we will, what I spoke about earlier, is identify that threat, harm, risk, and prioritise resourcing accordingly. Any area that maybe doesn't get the attention that people feel it should, there will be some kind of response, and we will look to what work we can do in the future, or how we can engage maybe our partners to take on some of that work that we're not able to deal with. And that's why we strive to develop those, real tight strategic working relationships.
Maxine, what would you say is the hardest that you've had to deal with within the bounds of that question?
I think that sometimes I get questioned a lot as to why I haven't got officers walking the beat, why a person hasn't seen a certain officer in a certain location. And all I say is that, as Karen was talking about, we do prioritise according to threat, harm and risk, but we also work with our intelligence-led policing systems. So, we are constantly looking at our crime, we're constantly recording our antisocial behaviour, and that leads us to the knowledge around where our hotspot areas areas are, where we need to focus our policing areas. And to be frank, I guess if you're not seeing a police officer in your street every day, that's probably a good thing. That means that you're not hitting the hotspot radar, and actually there's probably, in our mind, unless we know about it, there's probably no problems that we need to attend to there and then. But that's all down to people reporting. So it's always so important, because the community are our eyes and our ears, and if you don't report to us and you don't tell us about anything that's going on, we don't know about it, and then we can't focus.
Let's just pick you up, and perhaps if you could all join in on this one, is we've had a lot of questions from people saying they just don't seem to see the officers out on the streets as before. PCSOs you'd see perhaps if the full-time the PC is not there, but even those there seem to be much less of. So how can you reassure people that they're feeling safe when they're looking out and they seem to be not seeing the officers on the ground? Who would like to pick up that hot potato straight away?
I'll go.
All right,
if you're happy. So for me, it's about being efficient and effective. And so whilst they may not see officers on the street as much, we need to be efficient and effective in directing where our teams put their focus. So Maxine's completely spot on when we look at information, data, how report, what they're reporting, and balance our resource management on that, because we need to make sure that we're making the most effective use of our time. And whilst I appreciate people might not see police officers in the way that they were, crime has also changed, demand has also changed, and you've touched on it already, a few crime types that need our particular attention and focus that may not mean that we are there, but I'm sure the public would want us to be one efficient and one effective in what we do.
I mean, one criticism I've certainly heard is that it seems that police spend more time dealing with online issues rather than being out on the streets. Is that a fair comment? I mean, Karen, do you want to pick that one up?
No, I mean, what Dave's spoken about is crime types, and crime has evolved. So where we look back at sort of the Bobby on the beat, that isn't necessarily effective in dealing with certain crime types, because is that Bobby on the beat going to be effective for the young person in their house behind closed doors potentially being groomed online? That's not going to prevent that offence. So there are a number of we do have a number of specialist units across the force to deal with online offences, but it's about raising awareness. I'm Deputy Force Lead for the stalking portfolio in the force. So one of our biggest issues is online stalking, and that has evolved and that has increased more so since COVID. So, but it's people recognising those signs and warning signs that they are being stalked, even if it is online. So there is a number of online offences that we need to be targeting, including fraud. It does take up.
Maxine, isn't it really a case of perception here? Because, as I say, all the work that's being done behind the scenes, but do people really relate to seeing officers in their community? And is it the perceived lack of that makes them feel potentially unsafe?
I guess maybe it's about reassurance. And we do go out, we do reassurance patrols. And one of the great things that we've been trialling is what we call an antisocial behaviour car. So we look at our antisocial behaviour, all of your ICADs that are reported in from the community. Each one of those is looked at by the local PCSO and officer that's involved in that area, and where necessary we try to call back any of those that are repeat victims, and then go and visit and look at problem solving out some of that antisocial behaviour. And they're the things that really impact on people's lives the most. You may be a victim of crime where your car's been broken into on one occasion, but if you're constantly having antisocial behaviour, things thrown at your windows or youth congregating on a street corner, that can impact your life totally. And we're so aware of that and the impact it has, which is why we work closely with our problem solving team, which we have now in Surrey, and also our antisocial behaviour officers who guide us with the legislation around what we can and can't do to combat some of this crime. So I think that, it's really looking at how much more complex crime is today, and whether or not, Dixon of Dock Green as such, the beat officer, he didn't have to deal with digital crime, and he didn't have a phone. He booked in, and he didn't have an MDT, which is our mobile data terminals that were used to report all of our crimes through. He didn't have to do any of that. It's so much more complex. And it's not only complex for us, it's complex for our youths that are now getting targeted with different crimes. Bullying is no longer just in the school place. It's through Facebook or social media. Things have changed so much more, and we have to adapt and change with it. Otherwise, we'll be left in the dark.
Perhaps you've highlighted the most common crimes that you're seeing in Spelthorne, but perhaps if you could tell us which are the top of the league, and then we'll go around the table and see how that compares in the boroughs.
Well, as always, burglary is always a concern for all areas. I mean, I know in Spelthorne that we've worked really hard to reduce burglary in Spelthorne, and we have a great detection rate as well, down to the work and proactive work that we've done. But we've also worked with some small project areas, Neighbourhood Watch, and I'll just show you a leaflet now actually, which is some of the work we've done with our Neighbourhood Watch teams to produce a leaflet where our Neighbourhood Watch, our police officers and our local, what we call our JET team, which is our joint enforcement team, can go out and put these leaflets through the door, and you'll see they look like a footprint. And the idea is that you've left your house a little bit insecure, and because of that you might see a footprint in your house. And the idea is that we just fill in why we think it's insecure. Those are the kind of things that we're trying to do and achieve to prevent burglary for the future. Other crimes that we've seen of late, catalytic converter thefts, and that's a real problem for us. We know that some of our catalytic converter thefts and the suspects that are involved in it are coming into the areas, and we also know that they're becoming more violent. So we ask members of the public not to intervene but to call us on 999, and we've spent a whole load of money and engagement trying to educate and help people understand what a catalytic converter crime looks like. And also what to do around it. So, there come some of our key crimes. Other crime that we're seeing, theft from motor vehicles and high-powered vehicles being stolen using devices where they can code and take the key. You'll see that we've often put out information around making sure keys are in a tin or away from the door where they can't be cloned and the doors opened on cars. But that really is the kind of crime that we're currently seeing at the moment.
Karen?
Thank you. Exactly the same as Max. We have seen an increase in keyless theft of motor vehicles. A bit of good work from the borough was that we're running an operation, and we made 4 arrests this week in relation to keyless theft of vehicles across Tandridge. So if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see the story there. But also we have seen a rise in distraction thefts at cash points. So where someone will be going to take cash out and they'll be distracted, and within that time their card is taken and potentially used later on the same day. So we are really asking people to remain super vigilant out there. If they see anyone acting suspiciously near to the cash points, to report that to police, even attend in store just to let the staff at the location know. But and also speak with any neighbours or any sort of friends and family that may be vulnerable to this form of crime, just to advise them of what they can do to keep themselves safe.
Dave?
Yeah, so just slightly different from that, and this is the community aspect, I suppose, of our different areas. So for Woking, when I was there, a big concern of ours was drugs. And the impact of drugs not only to users but also through people being used to supply drugs, and it's really key and not lost on me the impact that drugs can have on a community, and that's again comes back to partnerships. So when you think about drugs diversion or drugs prevention, we play a role in that to support those people, because ideally we don't want drugs in our community, and it's about making sure that we target the right people, target our activity in the right areas, but also trying to help them as well, because the impact that drugs has on a various range of different crime types is pretty big, and it's important that the public help us in that. So talk about the messages, talk about drugs with our young people, enforce that they're bad and we shouldn't be using them, and the dangers that they can have not only on physical but mental health, those kind of issues really. So we play a role in that.
Just to remind you who we have around the table this evening: Dave, Temporary Chief Inspector, also Karen, Borough Commander in Tandridge, and Maxine, Borough Commander for Spelthorne. So another question that just come in. And it is Sophie on Facebook. Do common themes that present across all local forces get fed upwards to problem solve?
I think we all have common themes, and we look at problem solving. We have a central problem solving sort of kind of depository that runs across all the different forces, so we can share ideas. And I actually, as a local borough commander for Spelthorne, run a sort of meeting where I speak to other borough commanders on my bordering areas in Thames Valley and the Metropolitan Police, and we talk about crime types that cross over our borders and share ideas. So we do try to problem solve out between us and take those good learning points from each other. And as a Surrey Police, all of the borough commanders meet on a regular basis, and we talk through and we actually give presentations to each other about things that have worked and things that don't work.
Actually, that sort of just crossed my mind how this all works on a structural level, because you've got the Chief Constable at the top. How does it all sort of filter down? Do you have a certain amount to be able to run it how you want? Or does the Chief say, ultimately, it's my call?
Well, the chief.
The
chief's in charge.
Yeah.
And we're really fortunate in our force that Gavin Stevens, our Chief Constable, led the neighbourhood policing portfolio for the country up until recently, and was instrumental in the model and the guidelines that we now use to carry out neighbourhood policing. So we have really been led by the national expert in neighbourhood policing, which is fantastic. So he sets what we should be looking at and why and how our model. But the model then that flows down, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it does empower a borough commander to work with their senior management team for their division to highlight what they focus on and what they work through. So, like I said, when I said it's a privilege to be a borough commander role, it really is.
And I think that's where we spoke about earlier, that it's vital that we have that autonomy, because we've got to tailor our response according to the needs and demands of those particular communities that we serve in the borough, and we're given that autonomy. And then it's for us then to empower our teams, our partners and the public, so we come together and jointly problem solve.
You did mention resources, so I'm going to come to Maxine again, because this is a question from Sue on Facebook. Thanks for your question. And she says, I think that all residents are very interested in their borough. I'd like to know how many police and PCSOs Spelthorne has. How does Spelthorne's crime rate compare with other Surrey boroughs? And she points out, or feels, Staines is virtually a no-go area on Sundays due to crime. So quite a lot for you to go at.
Yeah, absolutely. There. So as a safer neighbourhood team, we have 9 current PCs posted onto the team, and we have 13 PCSOs, but currently running with 7. So we have a number of PCSOs that have recently just left to become police officers. Is often quite used as a stepping stone to become a police officer, and great opportunities to maintain that sort of level of experience within the force. And we got 2 sergeants. So that's just the Safer Neighbourhood team. We have neighbourhood policing teams as well, which are also our response team. So we support and they support us. So that's a much larger team. And within that also, we've got all the specialist teams that work with us too. In relation to, what was the other question? How to get
the crime rate, and also Staines being she feels virtually a no-go on Sundays.
Yeah, the crime rate in Staines actually is comparable across all of the areas. There isn't anything that stands out any different. Most of the areas are very comparable. Our burglary rate is lower. And we probably see more antisocial behaviour at the moment. And that's been a general increase across all the boroughs since COVID and the lockdown. As we came out of COVID lockdowns, we saw a rise in antisocial behaviour involving youths, and that's still filtering through now at the moment.
Do you think that's what she means by no-go on Sundays?
Well, I know exactly what she's talking about. Staines has notoriously had an issue over the last number of years with many people coming into the Staines Town Centre on a Sunday, and there has been some kind of not joyriding, but some showing off of very nice cars in the area and groups meeting up. We've worked tirelessly actually with our teams to improve that, and it has improved massively. I think if you step back 2 years and now look at where we are now, you'll see that actually the whole environment of Staines has changed. We have recently worked with all of our partners around the youth ASB in the town with some various things like egg throwing, which all the towns see, and we're currently working with our partners and looking at whether or not for the future a PSPO, which is a protective order that we can put in place, a protective spaces order, where we can put conditions in, would be favourable, and that would also help us with our issues around catapult crime, wildlife crime, the antisocial behaviour in town, and also what we're seeing, which is the congregation of youth and persons in the car parking areas. So all of that can be incorporated, but that literally is just on the table at the moment, and I'm working with our partners currently.
I mean, you talked about how hard it is to be a borough commander, and just taking all the things that you just said there. Antisocial behaviour can take all sorts of forms, but unless somebody has actually broken the law, you can't clog them all up in the cells for certain things. So how do you make a decision as to what needs a guiding piece of advice, or where you have to say this has crossed the line into an arrest?
Well, some of the antisocial behaviour that you see does cross the line. So we call it antisocial behaviour, but actually probably looking at public order offences, which would include things like calling of names, swearing, spitting, that kind of stuff. That is an offence, and we can deal with that. When it involves young people, what we try to do is look at trying to get them into a system where they're going to be educated, and understand that that's the wrong thing to do, as opposed to convict and criminalise young people. The last thing you want is a criminal conviction on a young person early on. So it's about diversion, and it's about involving them and getting them involved in problem solving. So that's kind of work that we're trying to do in that respect. Some antisocial behaviour is what we call, there is no low level. There is no low level of antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour is a problem when you've got it. But if it's causing people not to go to a shopping precinct, then that's an economic problem. If it's causing people to avoid an area, that's going to always have an impact on local people. So, we've got to look on each case and its merits, and problem solve it out as we go.
Karen and Dave, how does the antisocial problem compare in your boroughs?
It's fair to say that Tandridge suffers with antisocial behaviour. I would like to see more reports of it, because I think some people consider it, what Maxine has just said, low level, which doesn't exist. There is no low level antisocial behaviour. So in order for me and my team to really tackle antisocial behaviour across the borough, we need to know about it, understand how it's what it is and the impact in order for us to tackle it. There are locations across Tandridge where there has been significant work carried out with partners to tackle antisocial behaviour, one being Oxted Town Centre, where we put in some short-term measures which included a dispersal order in order for police to direct individuals to leave the area, whilst in the long term working with partners to intervene with their behaviour and prevent future offending. So I just encourage people to report incidents of antisocial behaviour, because it can cover so much. There is no low-level antisocial behaviour, and we need those reports to come in.
Dave?
Yeah, completely agree. And just echoing my colleagues on there is no low-level antisocial behaviour. Let's not beat around the bush. It is extremely impactful to those that experience it, and shouldn't be accepted. And I think looking at what we do, and when we talked about earlier about our antisocial behaviour officers and looking at the legislation, we look at volume, we look at impact, and if need be, we will take individuals and houses to court in order to enact behavioural change that is impacting on our communities. And we have done that. We regularly do that in all of the 11 boroughs. And I think that's really important to kind of demonstrate. But it's about working as a partnership. And again, we can't do it on our own. We need the council, we need the housing associations, we need support of our team, wider teams to enact that behavioural change in people.
And people can report online as well, can't they? It's not just 101.
Yeah, we've got lots of ways to do it, and a real big innovation for us recently is around the digital 101. So using Facebook, where we're being hosted tonight, and Twitter to use that the messaging service that you can interact with us and report on there, because that's fantastic.
Still time to get some questions in on YouTube or Facebook, however you're watching us tonight. Another question has come in from Jasmine, so hello to you. She says, criminals are getting very smart with techniques and scams they use. How does the police stay ahead of these new techniques and scams so they're not just reactive and keep us safe?
I can take that one. So, interestingly enough, we've just managed to support the implementation of a new unit in Surrey, which is a digital policing unit, headed up by an inspector, detective inspector, and that unit is actually like a repository of information and advice for officers to be able to go to around kind of modern type offences and crimes. We've also got a dedicated cybercrime unit. And we've also got a dedicated fraud economic crime unit. So all of these units are specialist areas where they can help and assist to officers on the street to get information. And where the cases are complex, they'll take the whole case and investigate. So that helps us stay abreast of kind of the new methods and technology. We also publish 2 documents to help local people, and that's the Big Book of Scams, which is available online, and anyone can get that off the Surrey Police website. And also there's a new one called the Book of Cybercrime, which is really useful for businesses and people, and it talks about kind of how they can get scammed on the digital space.
And I suppose, what was happening over the last couple of years and people not being able to get out and maybe looking on dating sites. I mean, presumably is that a big one for people to get caught out?
Definitely. Romance fraud is one of the key problems that we do see. And the key issue with it is that it's not reported as much as we know it should be. A lot of people feel very embarrassed and they can lose thousands of pounds in romance fraud. We often find the people that do come forward don't want their families to know that they've been involved in it because they're terribly embarrassed. They might have lost all their inheritance for their families simply because somebody has managed to scam them and use those feelings and emotions to take their money. I
suppose the lesson is if it seems too good, it probably is. Another question that's come in, Danielle, also on Facebook. How hard is it to get members of the community involved in policing their neighbourhood? Dave, is your on the left here?
Good, great question. Again, it depends on all the communities that we do, but what I've found is there are a lot of vested members of the community out there who want to be part of making their area feel safe. And an example of that is when we were in Woking, we set up a canal watch. We had an issue along the Basingstoke Canal, and we were looking for members of the community to assist us in looking after the canal, but carrying out neighbourhood patrols, and supporting our work there. And we had a great uptake, some fantastic local members of the community who were vested in making that the safest place it could be. And it worked really, really well. And we're all very grateful about the support we have from our local community.
Yeah, I would like to sort of make special mention to Neighbourhood Watch and the fantastic work they do across the boroughs. Yeah. In Tandridge, we have a really strong Neighbourhood Watch network, but we want to grow it and we want to make it bigger. So I'd say if people want to get involved, please get in touch with us and we can find out whether there is an active network, and maybe if not, we can look to together set one up. So it's headed up by a great volunteer in the community who coordinates all the groups. So really grateful for all they do.
I'll just talk about one of the projects that we're currently sort of trying to set up at the moment, and it's due to go live at the end of April. And the project involves our local youth, and we're trying to get our youths engaged in working with the police and other partner agencies to problem solve out some of the issues at Sunbury. And we've gone out to a number of businesses and we've been brilliantly supported. The idea being that there'll be a panel of people who will be able to be mentors for our local young people. They'll be able to help them and assist them put their projects into place. And we'll be looking at funding requests through those local companies and things as well. And that's been really brilliant. And I think it's really important at such a young level to get our children and our young people involved in their communities, because if you love your community, you'll look after it and do anything to make it better, and that's the key thing.
Just a general point, I just see a question here from Carol on Facebook. general sort of stress and depression in the force? Is that a difficulty when you're dealing with so many different issues?
There's always challenges. I think anyone would say a police officer or working in the police service, that includes staff members. Can be a real challenging role. So there are challenges with physical, mental health at times for people that work in traumatic events and dealing with traumatic incidents. We do have a great service that helps us, I'd be fair to say, and we're always looking out for each other at every rank. I think that'd be fair to say.
Yeah, it's one of those roles that, compared to other jobs out there, not all jobs, because there are jobs that will also be exposed to trauma, but we are more likely to be exposed to those high levels of trauma. So, there is for me, and I know for a number, for the force, that well-being is and has to be a priority, because if we don't get it right with our people in the organisation, then how are they going to serve best the public? So we do have an occupational health unit that we would refer members of the team, members of the staff to. And we also have diffusers in force that are amongst teams. So if there has been a particularly traumatic event, then the diffuser will bring the individuals involved around for a debrief and identify whether there are any additional needs or support that's required.
We've got some strong staff networks as well. I mean, I'm the chair of the Women's Network in Surrey, and we do help and support a lot of our women colleagues. But there's also other various networks throughout the organisation which help and support all of our colleagues, and obviously Unison and Federation as well. And the welfare system that we have in place, we've also got charitable organisations that assist and help us with like day-to-day kind of issues and counselling services. So I think we're very well supported, and our officers are very well looked after.
A few other questions just coming in, which we're running out of time, so we'll whiz through these. George on Facebook, why do you take electric scooters off people trying to get to work? Anyone want to take that one?
Oh, I think Dave's the expert.
A good question, and it's quite a question that we get quite a lot, actually. Electric scooters is a bit of a hot topic. What I'd say about electric scooters at the moment is we're still waiting for the government to decide what their classification is and how they can be used, and I know there's trials ongoing across the country, and I don't think there's any in Surrey. But what I would say is at the moment, there's no regulation about how they're used. There's no regulation about what mechanics they are. They can be very dangerous, and we've seen across the country a number of injuries and fatalities, unfortunately, around their use. And there's governance and structure and guidance for a reason, for our own safety. And I think until we have that, which is out of our policing control, then I feel, as an organisation, we need to be proactive with that. And I think also as a public, we need to be proactive. So if your child has one, if your friend has one, have a conversation with them and go, look, do you really need that? Are you sure? And also, if you go out drinking or if you take drugs and you get on that scooter, that is a mechanically propelled vehicle by our legislation. And you could lose your licence, your driving licence, even though you're not driving a car, you're driving a scooter.
A couple more questions, then we'll round up. Ian on Facebook, I'd like to know what the police are doing about van tool thefts. Just one of you to answer that, please.
Really interesting, actually. It's a very difficult subject because most of the tools that are taken are not individually marked or identifiable. So they're easily sold, and we see them on Facebook marketplaces and in car boot sales. Really difficult to identify. So my first plea is that if you've got a lot of tools in a van, do they A, need to be in the van all the time? B, could you consider getting them marked up uniquely to yourself? Some people actually solder or do things to them so that they can't be removed. We have done a lot of work around car parking areas. We do a lot of intelligence work to try and establish who's doing this type of crime. And more recently, we did have a small spate in which managed to stop it. We did arrest one person for thefts from vehicles, and they were charged and put before the court, and that saw a reduction. Whether that person was responsible for all, but it takes one person to be put before the court, and normally it means that others won't come into the area. So we're hoping.
All right, your chance to sell your individual borough in this last bit. Any upcoming ways the public can come and find out more about what you're doing? Karen?
Yeah, so we are, and there's been a couple of events already, but we are road showing like Meet the Beat style events. So it's not just Meet the Beat, it's meeting some other key partners that do a lot of work in the borough, and potentially in particular that sort of community that we're going to. So keep a lookout on social media and local magazines, because future dates will be coming in, and we want people to come out, be very informal, and if you need to talk to us confidentially, you can. So those dates will be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Maxine?
We do the same thing. We do Meet the Beat events, and they're normally advertised on Facebook. I realise that not everybody has access to Facebook, and I also write for the local Shepperton Matters and Sunbury Matters. I'm also happy to write for any other local magazines or do some small pieces for any other Residents Association magazines, so that we can get messages out there. So I'll be happy to put those dates into those diaries and those events.
And Dave?
A plea for me, so if you see a PCSO walking down the street or a PC, come and have a chat. Just come and say hello, ask them a question, ask how their day was, and build that conversation and that engagement with us. So whilst we will do the events and we'll be around and we are online, just come and say hello if you see us.
Okay, and finally, Karen, something you said very early on in the programme about stalking.
Yes.
We've only got handfuls of seconds left, but there is currently a government campaign, enough of sexual assaults against women. Does that sort of tie in with what you're looking at with the stalking?
Very much. So one of the priorities for Tandridge this year is violence against women and girls, so reducing violence against women and girls. And we have got some work planned for the borough. This isn't about just reducing violence, eradicating violence. This is about changing mindset, language and behaviour. So we really want to take an educational approach, particularly with our young people, to what is and isn't acceptable. So some of that work will include working with partners such as licensing, taxi licensing, but we really want to involve members of the public. So if anyone's got a particular interest in that, then please come forward and drop us a message on our Beat page, and we'll make contact.
So thank you very much. Thank you. So to Temporary Chief Inspector Dave.
Thank you.
And to Karen, Borough Commander for Tandridge, and Maxine, Borough Commander for Spelthorne. Thank you very much for joining us. That is it for this Series 3 of Surrey Police Live. I hope you've enjoyed watching it and learnt something from all the topics we've covered, whether it's been modern slavery, whether it's been the recruitment. Incidentally, recruitment to be a police officer is still open until 23:59 tonight. We also looked at county lines. Plenty. If you've missed any of those, all those episodes are still on YouTube and Facebook. You can catch up with all that's what's happening on your local Beat page, as has been explained tonight. But we're now going to leave you with a look back at some of the best bits of Surrey Police Live. Hello and welcome to Surrey Police Live. And yes, we are live.
This evening we're going to be talking about missing people.
We're going to be talking about modern slavery.
We're going to be talking about a career on the front line.
I think it's quite alarming when people come into contact with the police. It's really surreal, and that's something that we really have to help manage.
If you look at the actual dogs we're using, the dogs has about 300 million scent receptors. If you compare that with your average human of 6 million.
People have different ways of dealing with prisoners. You take each person as they come. For me, something that I've always had in my mind is your voice is the most powerful tool. You just talk to people.
It's not always a straightforward process, and there's so many departments and units that you've never even heard of, and you're like, oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's a bit like a jigsaw where everyone's piece matters in order to make sure that that investigation is, as tight as possible, ready for court.
I really got the bug for the thrill of the chase, so I liked the idea that I could be out there trying to catch some of the criminality. That's what interested me.
If you're worried, report it, and whether that's to us or via the other alternatives. But I think if you have a concern, please report it.
When we look at sexual exploitation, it will be the odd comings and goings from houses. A lot of the time, a lot of these brothels are identified as a result of intelligence from the community, where people have seen things that aren't right, and then we've gone in and we have ultimately recovered victims of trafficking.
If you see something that's not right, if you see something suspicious, if you know about crime, please tell someone, because if no one knows, no one can help make it better. That means going to the police. That is what they're there for.
Let's have a look at the news.
The week saw a number of warrants and searches executed at homes across Surrey.
We're appealing for help to trace the owner of several items which we suspect were stolen in a burglary.
CCTV cameras captured this nosy parakeet enjoying a good bird's eye view in the car park at St Peter's Hospital in Chertsey on Monday.
A teenager has been banned from driving for 15 months after initiating a dangerous high-speed pursuit with officers in Woking last November.
And last, but by no means least, we'd like to introduce you to our latest fluffy recruit, Chester. Chester, a spaniel puppy, was rescued by the RSPCA after he was dumped on the side of the road earlier this year. After being lovingly looked after by our foster family, Chester has been enjoying his first few days at our dog training school, where he's in line to become a sniffer dog. It's a huge paws up from me, and well done, Chester.
That's all we've got time for today.
Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for your comments on Surrey Police Live.
Thank you for watching, and good evening.